Turkish Airlines presents Business Africa.
You're watching Business Africa with me, Ruth Lago. These are the headlines. At a time when many are calling for an energy transition in the face of the climate emergency, can Africa go without fossil fuels without compromising its economic development? At the 37th edition of the Crans-Montana Forum in Brussels, Gabon is trying to position itself as the new El Dorado for foreign investors. And finally, in Ghana, a rail link between the west of the country and the port of Takoradi will soon be completed, boosting trade. Many countries in Africa derive most of their export revenue from oil and gas. At the same time, the continent, which accounts for just 3% of global CO2 emissions, is the most impacted by the effects of climate change. In recent years, Africa has been called upon to decarbonize its economy. South Africa has taken the plunge after receiving $8 billion in loans for its energy transition at COP26. The country has begun closing its coal-fired power plants, but the continent's most industrialized economy has suffered under recurrent power cuts.
The crisis between Ukraine and Russia has redrawn the ecological ambitions of developed countries like the G7, the main investors in fossil fuels in Africa. As a result, countries such as Uganda and Senegal have been able to pursue their oil and gas projects, while at the same time committing themselves, like the rest of the world, to achieving the global ambition of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. At the Paris summit on the new Global Financial Pact on June 23, very few concrete steps were taken to limit carbon dioxide emissions to 1.5 degrees Celsius, but the continent's countries were called upon to further embrace the ecological transition, even if the continent is already following in this regard. According to the Mo Ibrahim Foundation report published in September 2022, on average, 22 African countries use renewable energies for 40.5% of their electricity production, compared with 34.1% worldwide and 39.1% for the European Union. However moderate the report, in the short to medium term, low-emission fossil fuels such as natural gas will still have a role to play in bridging Africa's energy gap.
The Director General of the African Energy Chamber, NJIU JD, is with me, coming from Johannesburg in South Africa. Speaking of the energy transition on the continent, for you, Africa can't go without natural gas.
There cannot be an African energy transition without natural gas. We could see what happened in Europe. After the war in Ukraine started, many European countries moved immediately to burning coal. But also at the same time, African countries were left without any kind of power or electricity. Let's not forget, 600 million Africans don't have access to electricity. 900 million don't have access to clean cooking technologies, most of them women. Natural gas, using LPG to really solve our climate crisis is so important, rather than having a big number of population cutting down trees at the same time hurting the environment. So we need to use gas, because gas is a clean fossil fuel. And also the European Union defined gas as green energy. But it cannot be green for Europe, and it's not green for Africa that is really underdeveloped and very energy poor.
What do you believe would be an effective transition that could allow the continent to reduce carbon emissions and develop our economies?
We need to embark on technologies that drive on a low carbon production of natural gas. Western nations and wealthy countries, they need to decarbonize. They need to decarbonize fast. African nations need to industrialize. But at the same time, we need to bring renewables into our grid and into our energy systems. So what do? We bring in solar, we bring in wind, we bring in green hydrogen, and we drive that in the African economy, while we're using natural gas to transition, so we have a pragmatic, common sense, and orderly transition that does not leave anybody behind.
Climate conferences have multiplied, but the progress is minimal. Do you think that Africans are heard?
The problem is that Africa was promised in 2009 and 2015 $100 billion every year to move away from green energy, to move away from fossil fuels. Guess what? They have delivered zero. None of that money has been delivered. So about $1.3 trillion still outstanding. But right now we're being said, well, shut down their economies. Look at South Africa today. South Africa went with these promises that came from wealthy nations and COP and everything and abandoned its coal-fired plants, didn't maintain it. And guess what? Africa's most industrialized nation is facing 8 to 10 hours a day in the dark. That will be what is going to happen across Africa if we don't go with a common sense transition.
What should African leaders do to change the situation?
Africans have to do a lot more by themselves. You cannot wait on Europe or the wealthy nations to do it for you. Superman is not coming. Wakanda Forever is a good movie, but the Black Panther is not coming. We're going to have to rally funds around Africa and do it ourselves and really drive ourselves in that new economy that is transitioning. $2.3 trillion of private capital lives in this continent. We have to be able to face it. We cannot always rely that every time we want to do a project, we have to go abroad and beg for money from Europe in order to develop Africa when there are trillions of dollars in Africa. We got to do this ourselves.
What role does the African Energy Chamber intend to play in coordinating this African Energy Pact?
And as the African Energy Chamber, we've been proud of some of the fact that energy poverty was never talked about for a long time. We put energy poverty on the map, and right now every African leader is talking about energy poverty. But we need to do more. We need to really drive that message harder, and we need to have one African negotiation and not 55 energy transition plans. It would not work. Because Africa is still 2.73% greenhouse gas emissions. If you take out South Africa and Egypt, the rest of Africa is 0.05 greenhouse gas emissions. We still have a lot of work to do when it comes to improving our economies in a sustainable way, but we need to have a strong African voice.
Merci à vous.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for being patient with me.
At the 37th edition of the Grand Montana Forum in Brussels, Gabon presented a strategic plan to attract foreign investment. The country hopes to turn the page on the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on its economy and double its revenue from oil and gas production, while also consolidating its digital transition and creating more jobs.
The government's top team focused on how far Gabon has come in rebuilding its economy since the pandemic and the investment opportunities to create more jobs.
We presented the fundamentals of the Gabonese economy, namely level of growth in perpetual acceleration. Today we have a rate which is around 3% and which will remain about the same over a period of 2 to 3 years.
Gabon wants to speed up that pace with more investment.
An investment master plan that has been called the Transformation Acceleration Plan. So we are here to meet the Belgian businessmen and others in order to present this investment plan to them.
While oil and gas are Gabon's main source of revenue, there's also agriculture and mining.
We have a strategic plan on increasing production in terms of mineral exploitation, especially manganese,
and drive the green and digital transition to create more jobs, especially among youth.
These populations must have alternatives to be able to have a job. The technology sector, especially modernization in terms of digital, will be a major job provider.
In other sectors as well.
The infrastructure sector, the energy sector, the ecotourism sector, the digital sector. So it's above all these different sectors that we want to stimulate an investment dynamic.
It's about showing investors Gabon is a good bet.
Ghana has embarked on the renewal of its railway network, which dates from colonial times. After completing work on the Mansohuni Valley section in July 2022, Ghana and Afreximbank announced a deal at the end of June for the construction of a railway line 299 kilometers long, which will run from Mansohuni to the port of Takoradi, a strategic link for the country's economic development. A 299-kilometer railway line estimated at $2.1 billion is soon to be built in Ghana, linking the west of the country to the port of Takoradi, according to an agreement signed at the end of June between Afreximbank and Railway Ghana. The project is expected to reduce transport costs by 30%, while increasing the safety and reliability of transport services and boosting trade and economic growth in Ghana. In addition, 5,000 direct jobs are expected to be created during the implementation phase and a further 50,000 indirect jobs along the railway line. The railway will also facilitate the export of minerals and commodities, resulting in trade worth at least $950 million a year. After Ghana, the African Bank aims to finance similar projects in other countries on the continent. Thanks for watching Business Africa. See you soon.
Business Africa was presented by Turkish Airlines.